Kevin Decatur. I'm a police officer in Tecumseh but live in the township, so it sometimes helps me to boil things down to their simplest level. I think you've answered part of the question already, that a police ordinance is not mandatory. We don't have to do anything.
That's correct. No obligation to adopt any police power ordinance.
And so my question would be to you then, I guess, if that's permissible. There are state laws that govern wind generators already. There are recommendations and guidelines for those. What would make it necessary for the township to adopt something beyond what state law is already in effect?
Good question. A couple of things. One, if you're talking about the Department of Labor and Economic Growth's recommended guidelines on wind towers or setbacks for wind towers, those are not binding in any municipality. Those are just guidelines. So putting that kind of aside, there are other environmental laws that may apply or may not apply to certain activities. But ultimately, the decision whether a certain municipality should adopt any police power ordinance or not is a policy decision that I leave to the township board here and all of my municipal clients. So I don't get involved in that sort of policy discussion. But generally speaking, township boards adopt police power ordinances because they see a need to protect the public interest in some respect.
Go ahead.
Hi, Alice Clark. I have a question. We have some of our board members have signed leases. Now, is that a conflict of interest as far as them voting on different measures that we may have for the wind ordinances, or police power ordinance?
Ms. Clark, that's a good question, and that's probably premature. The conflict of interest rules in Michigan for municipalities, for town board members, come up when there's a question about whether or not to vote or discuss voting on or approving or rejecting an ordinance or any sort of action. And as far as I am aware, there's no pending ordinance before the board right now, so it's probably premature.
Greg Stein, Ogden Township. Part of the motion that passed to have this meeting was for you to provide an opinion on her question that she just asked.
As far as I know, the motion to go into closed session was to discuss a confidential written legal opinion, and I'm certainly not allowed to talk about the legal opinion that I shared for the town board in a proper closed session. So to the extent you're asking me to reveal that, then I can't do that.
No, I just remembered that was part of the motion that was passed at that time.
Tonight?
No,
This was back at the last board meeting when it was announced to have this special meeting and have you participate.
Could be. I haven't seen the meeting minutes, but I'm not here to reveal any legal opinion that I may or may not have shared with the town board on any topic.
Lynette Camp. So are you saying that if it come down to something they were going to vote on regarding the wind, that Phyllis and Jim would not partake in that vote?
That's not my call. Whether any board member participates in a vote based on a conflict or other reasons is not my call.
Okay.
Okay.
But they already said at a meeting earlier they weren't going to vote on anything that had to do with wind.
That's not my call.
Josh Van Camp. So if that's the case, and I understand, you can't make that opinion, would Jim and Phyllis then tell us tonight what their position would be in that regard?
I don't think that's a position we have to make at this point.
This means there's an ordinance.
Yeah, we're really talking about hypotheticals and kind of if this, so it's really difficult to, and it probably would just be speculation, at least on my side at this point.
What would the steps be then to start a police power or something like that?
Well, a police power ordinance could come up a lot of different ways. Any member of the public could present a proposed ordinance that they want the township board to consider. Alternatively, the board itself could have prepared for its consideration a draft police power ordinance. Sometimes advisory committees prepare those types of proposed ordinances. Can kind of come from a lot of different ways. But ultimately, once it gets to the board, then it's up to the board to hash out what they want or don't want in that ordinance. I thought a question in the back there. Sir, do you have a question?
Jim Stutzman, and just my opinion of what I've heard with people talking about Jim and Phyllis voting on a police ordinance. It's sort of my opinion that those 5 individuals sitting at the table were voted in by the public to represent all people within the township, not necessarily whether they signed a lease or didn't sign a lease. So therefore, you know, my feeling would be that if Jim and Phyllis feel like they have to not vote because they signed a lease, then I feel that they aren't doing their duties that I helped elect them to the board to do, because they aren't representing the township, the pros or the cons, either way, by not participating in the voting. That's my opinion.